If you want to live long in old age, stay away from these 7 types of fruit. They may look harmless, but they're silently killing the elderly every day. I'm not telling this to scare you, but to share what I've personally witnessed. Real stories, painful ones. Some elderly people skip meals and replace them with fruit, thinking fruit is healthy, cooling, and helps detox the body. But just a few days later, a mild headache suddenly turns into a stroke. Some go to bed and never wake up again. Do you know why? Because those fruits that look sweet and innocent are silently triggering skyrocketing blood pressure, making the heart race and causing already fragile blood vessels to explode without any warning. Older people often think, fruits are good, there's no harm. But the truth isn't that simple. Some fruits, if eaten at the wrong time or in the wrong amount, can easily turn a tasty bite into a life-threatening condition. Here are 7 extremely common fruits that many elderly people eat every day. But if not understood properly, they could cost a life. 1. Ripe bananas, a fruit thought to be nutritious, but can stop the heart. Right in the bathroom bananas. Such a familiar fruit that almost every household has them, and every elderly person has eaten them. Many even believe bananas are gentle on the body, good for the blood, aid digestion, cool the liver, and are great for older people. But it's precisely this belief that has turned bananas into a silent poison for the heart without many realizing it. Here's the issue. Bananas are extremely high in potassium, up to 450 milligrams in just one ripe banana. For younger people, the body can still regulate this naturally. But for the elderly, especially those taking blood pressure medication, diuretics, or heart-related drugs, excess potassium becomes a dangerous trigger. It can lead to irregular heartbeats, fainting, or even sudden cardiac arrest. I once witnessed a story that has haunted me ever since. An elderly man living near me, over 70 years old, loved bananas. Every morning, he would eat 2 bananas because he'd heard people say, "Bananas are cooling, help you sleep well, and aid digestion." His family never questioned it until one fateful morning. He was brushing his teeth when he suddenly collapsed. Without a sound, without a chance to call for help. His family rushed him to the emergency room in panic. The doctor's diagnosis, acute hyperkalemia, excess potassium in the blood, leading to a severe heart rhythm disorder linked to his diet combined with medication. Luckily, he survived, but had to undergo long-term treatment, use a pacemaker, and follow an extremely strict diet afterward. That story made me realize I can no longer take any fruit lightly, especially those labeled healthy. 2. Grapes, a luxurious fruit that can make blood vessels explode in an instant. When people think of grapes, they often associate them with elegance and nutrition, the fruit of wealth and luxury. Whether in the US or Vietnam, grapes are always among the most popular fruits, featured in wine tasting events and summer desserts alike. Many elderly folks also enjoy grapes because they're easy to chew, delicious, and rumored to be rich in anti-aging antioxidants. But what few people realize is that grapes can be a hidden killer when consumed by the elderly without proper understanding. Grapes are naturally very high in sugar, especially glucose and fructose. Once eaten, these sugars are absorbed rapidly into the bloodstream, causing blood sugar levels to spike and forcing the heart to beat faster to cope. For younger people, the body can adapt. But for the elderly, who often have unstable blood pressure and weakened hearts, this sudden change is a dangerous shock. I once heard a story from a friend. Her mother, now 74, lives in California. Every day she would eat several clusters of organic red grapes, thinking, fruits are good, these are clean, and they prevent cancer. But just 3 days into a heat wave after eating grapes continuously, she suddenly felt dizzy, began speaking slowly, and collapsed into a chair. At the hospital, the doctors diagnosed her with a mild stroke. The cause? Acute hypertension combined with elevated blood sugar, all right after a light meal of fruits, with grapes being the main culprit. It gave me chills. A fruit that seems completely harmless turned out to be a sweet trap for the elderly, if misunderstood. 3. Pineapple. A refreshing fruit that can make the heart race and the head spin. Every summer, those bright yellow, sweet and sour slices of pineapple are a favorite dessert in many households. For the elderly, pineapple is especially loved for its benefits, aiding digestion, cooling the liver, and fighting inflammation. But unfortunately, few people realize that pineapple can also trigger rapid heartbeats, sudden blood pressure changes, and dizziness if eaten the wrong way. Pineapple contains an enzyme called bromelain, which helps break down protein and supports digestion. However, when combined with the high natural acidity of pineapple, this enzyme can strongly irritate the stomach lining if consumed on an empty stomach. More concerning, bromelain can also increase blood circulation, which for people with unstable blood pressure or those on blood thinners can lead to dangerous circulation imbalances. I still remember the story of a woman in her 60s who lived alone in District 9, Ho Chi Minh City. She had a habit of eating pineapple every morning to cool her body and cleanse her mouth after the previous night's meal. One day before having breakfast, she grabbed half a pineapple to curb her hunger. About an hour later, she felt her heart pounding, her face burning hot, her head spinning, and her vision blurring. She thought she was just overheated, but when her niece came by and noticed she was speaking slowly and her mouth seemed slightly twisted, she rushed her to the hospital. Diagnosis: acute circulatory disorder with elevated blood pressure and temporary heart fatigue, mostly due to the strong reaction from the enzyme and acid in the pineapple eaten on an empty stomach. The doctor simply said, "Pineapple is good, but for older people, it's not something to eat just anytime." 4. Watermelon, a cool, refreshing fruit that can leave the elderly. Reeling at night, no one can deny the refreshing feeling of biting into a chilled slice of watermelon on a hot summer day. Juicy, mildly sweet, and full of water, it feels like your whole body cools down instantly. For the elderly, watermelon is even more popular thanks to its soft texture, easy-to-eat nature, and low-fat content. But there's something few people notice. This seemingly harmless fruit can silently cause blood pressure fluctuations, irregular heartbeats, and electrolyte imbalances if consumed in excess. Watermelon contains a compound called citrulline, a natural amino acid that helps dilate blood vessels and improve circulation. For younger people, this is a positive effect. But for older adults, especially those with weakened cardiovascular systems, frequent nighttime urination, or unstable blood pressure, citrulline can be a double-edged sword. I remember an elderly man from Long An, near a friend's home. He lived alone and loved eating watermelon at night, saying it cools the body and helps sleep. But after several nights of eating a large bowl of watermelon before bed, he began experiencing frequent nighttime urination, physical weakness, occasional dizziness, and a faster heartbeat than usual. He assumed it was just old age and drank some ginger tea before going to bed. But on the 5th night, he suddenly collapsed in the bathroom. Fortunately, a neighbor found him in time and called for emergency help. The doctor said he had electrolyte imbalance and nighttime hypotension, mainly caused by consuming too much watermelon in the evening, combined with pre-existing high blood lipids and metabolic issues. For the elderly, while watermelon is cooling, it increases urination, which leads to a loss of essential minerals, especially potassium and sodium, both critical for maintaining heart rhythm and stable blood pressure. 5. Red apples, a symbol of health that can catch the elderly. Off guard, red apples have long been a symbol of health, freshness, and balance. From supermarket shelves to nutrition ads and even doctor's advice, the phrase "an apple a day keeps the doctor away" has become almost gospel. But what many don't realize is this: not everyone is suited to eating red apples, especially elderly individuals with underlying conditions like diabetes, high cholesterol, or unstable blood pressure. Red apples have a higher glycemic index than green apples, meaning they cause blood sugar levels to rise more rapidly, prompting the body to release more insulin to manage the spike. For young, healthy individuals, this isn't much of a problem. But for older adults, with slower metabolism and fragile blood vessels, sudden fluctuations in blood sugar can be extremely dangerous. I once heard a story from a friend living in Houston, Texas. His mother, over 70 years old, would eat a red apple every morning with a glass of water, believing it was the perfect way to stay in shape and control blood pressure. But after more than 2 weeks, she began feeling dizzy when standing up, experienced a rapid heartbeat, and had bouts of restlessness. They thought it might be due to poor sleep or the changing weather. During a routine checkup, doctors found her blood pressure was erratic, her blood sugar fluctuating unpredictably, and her LDL, bad cholesterol, slightly elevated. The main cause? Eating red apples on an empty stomach every single day without pairing them with fiber, protein, or healthy fats to balance the sugar absorption. The takeaway is clear. Even foods labeled as symbols of health can have downsides if consumed at the wrong time or in the wrong way. For seniors who still enjoy apples, green apples are the better choice, with a lower glycemic index and a slight tartness that helps reduce sugar absorption. And regardless of the type, apples should be eaten after a small meal or snack, not on an empty stomach, and ideally with the peel on, if clean, to get the full benefit of the fiber. 6. Sweet oranges, a supposedly healthy drink that can make the elderly sway in seconds if used incorrectly. Oranges are among the most beloved fruits across America, from a staple in young people's breakfasts to a favorite on nutrition plans for the elderly. Most people consider oranges harmless, rich in vitamin C, good for the liver, and great for circulation. But few realize that drinking orange juice the wrong way can leave an elderly person dizzy, with a racing heart, or even collapsing without warning, especially if they have underlying heart or blood pressure issues. Oranges contain flavonoids, compounds that help dilate blood vessels and lower blood pressure. However, when consumed on an empty stomach, particularly in the form of strained juice with added sugar, the natural sugars absorb quickly into the bloodstream. This sudden spike in blood sugar causes the heart to beat faster in an attempt to regulate blood pressure, a demand that can be overwhelming for an aging heart. I'll never forget the story of Mrs. Eleanor, the mother of a friend who lives in San Jose, California. At 78, she's independent and still very active. Every morning, she'd freshly squeeze a glass of orange juice, add a spoonful of brown sugar to make it more pleasant, and enjoy it on her porch. But one spring morning, just minutes after finishing her orange juice, she stood up and was hit by a wave of dizziness. Her heart began to race, her steps turned unsteady, and she collapsed in the middle of the living room. Thankfully, her daughter Amanda was home and quickly called for an ambulance. At the hospital, doctors diagnosed her with a reflexive drop in blood pressure paired with a sudden spike in blood sugar, triggered by drinking sugary orange juice on an empty stomach. "I never thought orange juice could nearly take my mother's life," Amanda said, holding back tears. The lesson: even the healthiest drinks can become harmful when consumed at the wrong time or in the wrong way, especially for vulnerable seniors. 7. Ripe pears, soft and sweet, yet a silent trigger for blood pressure. Spikes in the elderly pears are among the most beloved fruits in the U.S., not just for their gentle sweetness and soft texture, but also for their reputation as a nutritious choice. Rich in water, fiber, and vitamin C, pears are often a go-to for older adults who believe they're gentle on the stomach, cooling for the body, and easy to digest. But behind the pear's tender surface lies a less-known reality. It can quietly disrupt blood pressure and digestion in seniors if not consumed wisely. Pears have a very high water content, which makes the stomach feel full quickly. That might sound beneficial, but when eaten right after a meal or consumed in large quantities, they can cause bloating, gastric pressure, and even discomfort around the heart, especially for older individuals with slow digestion or underlying heart conditions. One story that sticks with me comes from Mr. William, a 75-year-old retiree in Seattle, Washington. A careful eater, he often opts for fresh fruit instead of sugary desserts. One evening, after a light dinner, his granddaughter handed him a glass of freshly blended pear juice, proudly labeled 100% organic. Mr. William drank it with a smile, saying it was refreshing and soothing to the throat. But within just 30 minutes, he began feeling bloated, with a racing heart and flushed face. He had to lean against the wall to get to his room. The next morning, still feeling fatigued and mildly short of breath, his son took him to the doctor. The results were surprising. His blood sugar had spiked unexpectedly, and his blood pressure was slightly elevated. The culprit? The pear juice he drank after dinner, packed with natural fructose that overwhelmed his digestive system, especially on a full stomach. What's more concerning is that ripe pears in U.S. supermarkets often have a very high sugar content, especially if they've been ripened artificially or processed for juicing. That translates to a higher glycemic index, a hidden danger for elderly individuals with diabetes, high cholesterol, or those on blood pressure medications. Lesson learned, even the gentlest looking fruit can quietly tip the scales if consumed at the wrong time or in the wrong form. Dear friends and elders, we've just journeyed through 7 kinds of fruit, things that seem harmless, even hailed as natural miracles. But as we age, when our health becomes as fragile as a candle in the wind, even the smallest choices in what we eat can be the link that shapes the rest of our lives. The fruit itself isn't to blame. Bananas, grapes, oranges, pineapples, pears, they all hold nutritional value. But it's how we eat them, when we eat them, and how much we consume that turns them into either nourishing remedies or hidden dangers. I'm not sharing this to scare you, but to gently remind all of us of one simple truth. Old age doesn't allow for carelessness. A single bite today could mean peace and strength, or a regret that lingers through the rest of our years. If you found these insights helpful, please pass them on to someone you care about, because sometimes one timely reminder can be all it takes to save a warm hand, a quiet breath, or a silver head that still has a place at the family table.